I've been playing Star Fox Guard. So this
Yeah, the
came...
game which no one really cared about, apparently. Like, no one cared
Yeah,
about
no
Star
one
Fox
cared
Zero
about
to
it.
begin with, but Star Fox Guard was one of those games which I don't think many people even bothered reviewing
Exactly,
it, despite
like-
the fact that it came as a separate... Does it come as a separate disc? I guess you downloaded it so you wouldn't know, but
Yeah, so-
it was definitely an individual product of its own accord.
So yeah, I got Star Fox Guard with Star Fox Zero, and it was like a discount that Nintendo did on the eShop, and it was the same time almost as my Nintendo launch, and I thought I'd get some benefits. I got loads of points, and
Oh, right, you had to buy it separately. It didn't come with it when you bought it digitally.
no, it was like you got an extra discount for owning Star Fox Zero digitally, but
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It was hard for a game that was with Star Fox Zero getting such mixed reviews and such lukewarm reception. The little brother of the game with a lukewarm reception is never going to get much of a reception either. So
No, exactly.
I definitely think this was one that sort of the hardest of the core Nintendo fans and Star Fox fans went for. And it's kind of a shame that it didn't get more traction because this game does a lot of really cool stuff. Essentially, it's tower defense with a twist. I must admit, it was a lot deeper than I realized. But ultimately, you're protecting a central tower in the center of a maze, and you're protecting them from waves of robots that are coming onto the map. And you're using cameras that are planted around the maze, and you swap to the cameras using the touchscreen, and you shoot the robots. And what's so great about it is that it's one of those games that's very unique to the Wii U. You can't really do this on any other system. So when you're on the TV screen, you're looking at all your cameras and what they're looking at. And in the center of the TV screen is the camera that you're using at the time. So when you swap to that camera, it becomes the central screen. On the gamepad, it's an aerial view of the entire maze. So when robots come onto the map, you can see from an aerial view where they are on the map using the gamepad. But the advantage of the TV screen is that you can see them before they even come onto the maze. So it's sort of like preempting the robots coming on is more important when you're using the TV. I initially thought that the guns in this game were fixed. So you planted your cameras, which have guns attached to them, I should say. But there's so much like ability to customize where you put each camera before the matches start. So the whole game, there's 50 levels in the main game and then another 50 extra. So it's quite a meaty game. And there's 5 worlds, and in each world there's 3 areas per world, and within each area there's 3 stages.
It's like a fucking onion, isn't it? Just
Like
peeling
an
back.
onion. But within each area, so 3 stages within each area, your cameras stay set up between stages. So the first time you do a stage in a certain area, you can set up all your cameras the way you want to do the stage, and then for the next stage, all your cameras will still be set up. So you can sort of tweak them to see like what worked, what didn't work, and it's really great because I always moved the cameras from what the default told me. I always put them I really liked putting cameras that could see straight down corridors, whereas the game naturally tended to put cameras on sort of the sides of walls and things, and I didn't like them like that. I liked them straight down corridors because then when you switch to those cameras, it's much quicker to just start shooting the enemy you can see.
Right, because they're like directly in front of you.
Exactly. So another thing I didn't realize was that you can actually aim with the guns. Like I thought, like I said, they were fixed, and fixed in 2 senses. Fixed in the sense you can move the cameras about the map, which you can before the match, and you can actually do it during, but I never did that. And secondly, fixed in the sense that you can aim the gun while you're on a camera, if that makes sense. So it's, and like I said, massive Star Fox story put through it and everything, and that goes all the way through to the guns and the sound design, and it all feels like one very unified universe, which I can get to in a bit and talk about spin-offs. But it's just a really solid format because you've got 2 types of robots. You've got your chaos robots and your combat robots. So combat robots are what cause you to lose the stage. So if a combat robot reaches the middle, you lose. The chaos robots, it doesn't matter necessarily if they get to the middle, but they basically aid to the combat robots. So the Chaos robots do crazy stuff to your camera. So for example, there are these one Chaos robots that are like just these wind propellers, and they get close to your cameras, and then all of a sudden it makes all the cameras nearby point straight up in the sky and makes them hopeless. And it's really frustrating because then you go back to your camera and you have to spend time using the analog. You can control them using the analog sticks. There's no motion control. So it's analog sticks to move them back down. And that's just one example of a Chaos robot. Another example is this one that's a magnet, and basically it draws the attention of all the cameras. So you might have all your cameras facing the right way on each corridor, etc. But this magnet enemy just drags the cameras to face it, and then all your cameras out of place. That's another instance of making it really difficult. And then they help the combat robots, where the combat robots some move very, very fast and don't take many hits at all. Others are very, very plodding and slow but take a lot of hits, so you do have to spend a lot of time shooting them. There are some combat class robots that don't appear on cameras. They're invisible but do appear on the gamepad, and vice versa. So there are some robots that only appear on the cameras but not on the gamepad. So
it seems like they're kind of building difficulty by varying up the enemies that you're going against then, because what I was wondering is, I think in a lot of not necessarily tower defense style games, but horde mode stuff, like where you're having waves of enemies coming at you and you're kind of trying to take them all down and stay alive, they have the ability to like put down traps and lay down other kind of objects to help you in kind of slowing the flow of the enemies that are coming at you. So I was wondering, does this game give you more things to toy with, or is it just sticking with the base mechanics of moving these cameras and having the guns up and ready?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is a ranked system throughout. So there's 50 ranks in the game, and each rank unlocks something new, whether that's a level or a power-up. So the power-ups are range from stuff like a freezing cam, or a slow down time cam, or like an extra power cam. And these are basically add-ons you can put onto a camera to do what it says on the tin. So I think the most powerful one was definitely the slow down time camera. So while you're using this camera, time moves slower. So it gives you extra time to just point and shoot. So
does that apply to the entire maze, or is it just that individual feed?
I couldn't really tell, to be honest. I mean, I think the effect...
I guess like when you're focused on one thing at once, it's probably hard to like get a scope of the entire.
Yeah, I mean, if it only worked on what was in the scope of that camera, it would really muck up the time mechanics of the entire map. So I presume it slows down the entire map, but only works while you're on that camera. But yeah, there's like powerful cameras and things like that. So you can put these more powerful cameras in hot spots that you think more enemies will appear, which is quite nice. So there is a bit, and there is an added layer of the ability to like customize the map.
So you're saying cool. There's lots of kind of variation that you bring into it, because I think one thing with tower defense games is if you just stick with the same stuff and you're kind of going level to level, there may be a tendency to get bored with it and kind of get tired with the formula. It sounds like they kind of shake things up enough to where you're kind of engaged throughout.
This game shakes things up on a really nice number of levels. The game, it was almost perfect difficulty scale. It never felt too hard, and it never felt like I was just breezing through. It really genuinely felt like a genuine challenge each step of the way, and even the most hard levels, like maybe the final boss, and I can talk about bosses in a second, but the final boss, certain hard stages throughout, I only ever got stuck with them for maybe 2-3 times, and every time, maybe like the fourth time, I'd always do it. So it always felt like I was making progress, getting on, and it was just a really nice balance. So yeah, bosses. I didn't even realize this game actually has bosses. And when I mean bosses, I mean big dudes that come onto the stage, and it completely shakes up the formula, because for 2 of the worlds, the bosses are just more waves of robots, and that's fine. I completely understand, but I thought all the boss levels would be like that in this game. But actually, there's 3 separate bosses. So the first, third, and fifth world have these designed bosses that link to the Star Fox universe and are like extra big versions of some of the robots, and you fight them in a completely different way, and their attacks sort of wipe out numerous cameras at once, so you're really having to play the game in a different way. And I just thought that, especially the final boss, which has, I think, 3 or 4 separate stages, it just worked really well to mix up the formula, try something new. And I just think overall this game does so many great things. I think that it's very clear that this is a mechanic that has been shoehorned into the Star Fox universe, and I mean,
we know that from the fact that this whole idea was presented to us at E3 as Project Guard back in the day. So clearly Nintendo do this all the time anyway. Like, they have ideas for gameplay mechanics first and foremost, and then they're like, what franchise can we kind of stick onto this and kind of label? So,
and as much as it's shoehorned in, I do love it when Nintendo do these spin-offs, and obviously something like Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, where it just sort of takes the same universe and looks at an original story from a different angle, and obviously Captain Toad does link to the story of 3D World, and that's a cool little
as
twist.
far as a story even goes. But
it's very, very minute, but it's a nice touch, I think. And this game
Totally.
is the same. It links in some way, and you do see Star Fox and Falco and the rest of the gang and whatever, and all the planets are the same as Star Fox, apart from one new bonus planet, which I won't spoil. It's very funny though, and people should check that out. The final planet is hilarious. But I just really like that they try to keep it as one unified universe, and it's nice. I thought it was really good for that. But this game just screams out the sort of game I will really, really miss when the Wii U era is done. I'd put this alongside Star Fox Zero, obviously, and something like Nintendo Land. I think these are 3 games, and they're too few and far between. I think it's crazy that I can only name 3 off the top of my head, 2 of which are Star Fox. I'm trying to think of some other unique
Affordable Space
game.
Adventures.
Affordable Space Adventures. I'll even go for Mario Maker, although that's potentially doable. We'll see what Switch has to offer, but
yeah, I mean, it's essentially the games that use the 2 screens at once for kind of asymmetrical purposes.
Fantastic asymmetrical gameplay, and between like this Nintendo Land Zero, like I said, it will really be missed. I know none of those games really sold very well. You could definitely tell that Nintendo hoped they'd have a similar impact as something like Wii Sports. That was as far from the truth as possible.
Yep.
But they're just such great experiences that I'm glad to have experienced on Wii U, and they will be sorely missed. And I fully back the Switch. I think it's exciting, but you gotta give it to the Wii U. Like, it's got a level of innovation that is so fresh and something different. And it didn't work. I completely accept it didn't pay off, but I enjoyed it all the same. And this game is just another example of that. So yeah, Star Fox Guard. If you own a Wii U, I'd highly recommend trying it out. I think it's fairly cheap, and you're not going to get experience like it anywhere else. It was a really cool game. Loved it. It was good. Yeah.
Great. If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to hear more, consider subscribing to us on YouTube and following the podcast playlist. You can also find us on iTunes and various other places. Follow us on Twitter at TNL Podcast and email us thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.